We've covered a lot with the post-production side of things, but there's also another major cataclysmic shift which is going on, of course related to post-production, but camera technology, 4K cameras. I mean, I'm actually shooting this interview with two cameras. One is a Sony, which was £12,500 4 years ago. The other is a JVC 4K camera that's less than a quarter of that price and producing stunning images with more potential than what I could do with HD. And if we take it back even further, it's not that long ago that it was standard def. So that's the other incredible shift that's going on. And it goes back to the very famous Francis Ford Coppola quote where he said one day, and I don't know if I'm quoting exactly, but one day some housewife in Ohio is going to win the Academy Award for doing a wonderful film. And I think we've arrived. I think that's almost where we're at. Maybe not 100%, but not far off.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It's as big a shift as anything that's happened, and with a historical perspective, completely unbelievable that we are where we are with this technology. We were just in the news yesterday. There was this thing about the GoPro camera that was recovered after 2 years. Some students in Arizona sent this camera up using a weather balloon and photographed the Earth from space. And because they were using an iPhone to track it, and the balloon fell in a place where there was no iPhone location, and so they lost it. But a person hiking found this thing that had been sitting there for 2 years and returned it to them, and now you can see it on YouTube. But the point is, here are students photographing the world in high def from outer space, which is fantastic. From a filmmaking point of view, the expansion of the bit depth of the image and the amount of 4K or 6K or 8K or whatever we're going to get into, there's obviously a point at which the fidelity of the image is beyond what we need. On the other hand, what that fidelity gives you is the ability to reframe and manipulate the image to a greater extent. And I've been doing this since 2006, which is when I edited the first digital film that was shot digitally, and discovered how much you could push the image around in post-production. The rule of thumb with film was that you could blow up an image by 20% without revealing the grain structure of the film. With even cameras back in 2006, the Sony 900 that we were using, I could blow it up by 120% and still not see, it would still hold up on a 60-foot screen. You had to be careful what shots you used. You couldn't take a wide shot and blow that up, but a medium shot into a big close-up looked fantastic. And that was, it was 10 years ago almost. So David Fincher now and us on Tomorrowland, we were shooting much more than 4K, but what that gave us the ability to do would be to have very great freedom in the remanipulation of the image. And this is a psychic challenge, I think, to filmmaking. Is the frame at the time of shooting, is that sacred? Or is that the word now, instead of shooting, it's acquisition? We are collecting stuff that then we'll do something with later. So is the sanctity of the frame a historical legacy from the years when you could not do anything with the frame? Now the frame is wide open for manipulation, combining different takes in the same frame, blowing stuff up or blowing stuff down so that you overscan, and if you want to at any moment actually have a wider view, there are pixels out there that you can bring in and pull back from a shot. And so this is happening now, and it's going to continue to happen more and more. And the same thing applies to sound. I mean, the question is, why would anyone record at 192 kilobytes instead of 48? Well, yes, we can't hear the difference between 96 and 192, but if you record at 192, you can slow that sound down to half speed or quarter speed, and you get none of the artifacts of slowing a sound down. It's particularly useful in sound effects recording, to record at that super high level to give you the ability to then manipulate the sound later on. So the same thing is happening with the image.
I've had some cinematographers, high-end cinematographers, comment on exactly what you talked about there, the sacredness of the frame and whether it should be pushed in or not. And some cinematographers have this opinion that they want it to be used the way it was shot because they shot it that way for a reason. And maybe that's fine in certain circumstances. I'm not even sure if it is fine, it's just a comment. But for the rest of us, and I'm talking about people like me and all sorts of other cinematographers out there, or camera people, or whatever you want to call yourself, I'm filming you now in 4K. I've framed it wider than it needs to be. Right. I know I've got that total ability to go to 200% without any trouble at all. Right. And 200% would be way too tight anyway from where I'd framed it. So some people might get uptight about it or think that's their art, but for the rest of us.
Sure. It's if the film is conceived and executed according to a rigorous plan where everything has been worked out, and in the editing, nothing is changed from the original conception of the screenplay to the storyboards that were drawn to the shooting, then there's a case for the sanctity of the frame, because no, that's what we decided. But very few films are actually shot that way. Inevitably, the first assembly is 30% longer than the finished film, or more. And so you have to then change the skeleton of the film, the structure of the film, and that puts an incredible pressure on individual shots because they were shot presuming that this scene would be here in the film, but now it's 20 scenes later, and that character, we've cut that character out of the film. We have to erase that person, and the easiest way to do that is simply to reframe judiciously. I mean, you have to do it. There has to be artistry at every level. You can't just reframe willy-nilly. You have to absorb the aesthetics of the original cinematography and reframe according to those aesthetics. And so in that sense, editors are becoming cinematographers because of that need to be super sensitive to the aesthetics of what it has. And cinematographers in years to come, now even, have to brace themselves against that possibility. So to shoot things that are able to accommodate reframing, if a cinematographer shoots in a way that a 5% deviation kills the shot, then that's not going to work in years to come. It has to have a little more, its knees have to be loose in a sense to accommodate this pressure.
I get that. And I think people do get precious about things, and it might matter to them, but it's them, and it might not matter ultimately. And it might even improve, I would say definitely the ability to reframe will improve a film if you have a reason to do something. Just as the cinematographer has a reason to shoot in a certain way, he doesn't know what goes on in the editor's mind. So I think some of that will fall away. And not only that, I actually think we've been here before, many times before. It went from film to tape. I'm talking about for news and for television. It went from film to digital in the feature film world, even though film is still there. We've seen so many changes in technology on many levels, and I think there's been people crying out in pain all through the changes that they're not happy with. So do you agree we had these arguments in different situations all along the whole technological development.
Yeah, no, it's it has always been the ability to make film flexible, and film is inherently flexible, and the flexibility of film is only increasing at greater and greater levels. I remember I was doing ADR with Marlon Brando on The Godfather. So it was me and Francis Coppola and Marlon, and we were working our way through the film, and about halfway into the film, Francis suddenly looked at his watch and said, "Well, I have to go now. You guys continue." And so he took off, and there I was in a dark room with Marlon Brando. And we finished the reel that we were working on, and then we're loading up the next reel. And in the dark, he said, "People say I mumble." And so I thought for a second, what was the right answer to that? And I said, yes, they do. People do say that you mumble. And he thought for a moment, and then he said, "They're right, I do mumble. And I'll tell you why. Because when we shoot this scene, whatever scene it is, I don't know if it's going to be in the film or out. And if it's in the film, I don't know whether it's going to be where it was in the script or someplace else. So if I don't move my lips, then later on, when I see the finished film, we can change the dialogue and I can say something different, more appropriate to where the scene is in the movie." This is the equivalent of that, I guess. It's the basis on which decisions are made are at a certain point during shooting, but in post-production, things may change and you have to be able to change stuff. Otherwise, that original decision, however good it was, looks completely wrong. So we have to have all of those tools at our fingertips in order to accommodate those kinds of changes.